Well, I promised Kevin Matthews, and I have delivered. Hello, Kevin.
Man, Joan, I have not seen you in years.
Since I was a child.
Yeah, well,
and you were a
it's
child.
beautiful to see you.
It's good to
Great
see
to
you
see you.
too.
I'm so glad that you're on the radio.
It's new and different, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's my forte was the radio, you
of course.
television, and now you're over here, which
I know.
I love radio. It's magic.
Well, it's been so much fun. I especially like being here because I love to talk to people who are really passionate, whether it's politics or issues or a charity they work for, or they're activists for gay rights or racial equality. I mean, those are some of the most interesting people to talk to, I think. And then, of course, people who have a great story to tell, like you do.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it's an amazing ride how what happened to me in 2011 and now fast forward 8 years later, and it's become known around the world as
well, you
magic.
were pretty darn famous before all this. Too.
Yeah,
you
but not in the Philippines or over in Asia or
wow.
in those parts, and that is amazing to me.
Well, didn't you? I've got something here I wanted to talk about that you had. There was something that you did where there were like 65,000 people.
We did, if you remember, we did a live comedy show with Mike Meyer, Dana Carvey, and Ellen DeGeneres.
Oh, Grant Park.
Grant Park.
You performed in front of 65,000
that night, and Ellen and I go back because Ellen and I were competing in Showtime's Funniest Person in America. Now, this is way before Ellen hit big, but she won her state. I won in Michigan, and that's how we got to know each other. And she beat me out and became the funniest person in America.
Wow.
So I lost to a good, somebody very, very talented, of course, Ellen DeGeneres. And
what was it like then? What was she like then?
Oh, I love her because of her observations, and she still is. She just recently, it was either on HBO or Showtime, she came back out and she went back on the road, and it's been decades. And she hasn't lost it. I mean, there's something, she's got such a dry sense of humor, and I've always respected her for that, because she can really make people think and laugh.
And she said in an article about that tour she did that she wanted to remind people that she wasn't always nice.
Yeah.
Because everybody thinks I'm nice all the time because that's what they see on the Ellen Show. She goes, I wanted to remind them that I'm not always nice.
But even her, what is nice? She's a very kind person. She's always been kind, and maybe the topic she's talking about, that was really a nice special that she did. It was nice to see her again.
So you were the funniest guy in all of Michigan.
This is a long time ago.
And then what happened to the young Kevin Matthews?
Well, the young Kev eventually got asked to come and join the Loop radio with Brandmeier and Steve and Gary, and they bought AM 1000, and that got into 32 states in Canada. Nobody our age demo was listening to the AM. And it forced literally just millions of people from the FM over to the AM. And it was the perfect storm. And there's a documentary. Somebody wants to make a documentary about Brandmeier and me and Gary and Steve and whatnot. And it's not about us. And I said they wanted to call it Radio Gods or something. And I'm like, that's so lame.
Radio Gods.
Come on. No, what happened, it was the perfect storm. Here it is, AM 1000, Brandmeier, myself, Steve, Gary, the Chicago Bulls. We got the Bulls. Phil Jackson's a new coach. This new kid from Carolina, Michael Jordan. What was happening? Look at Mort Downey Jr., Phil Donahue's on his way out. Woman Oprah's on her way in. Look at you and what you were doing on television. You had giants like Ron Majors and Bill Curtis, and you had the advertising world. You had Bill Murray and Chris Farley. Chicago was just a whirlwind of content and talent, and I was so blessed to be a part of it. That's how come I live in Michigan now, but I know you hear, I spent almost 30 years of my life here. I love it. This is truly, truly a magical place.
So, where you live now, you're back where the cousins
I'm
and
back.
everybody
Well,
are?
I'm back where I went to school and met my wife 36 years ago. I'm in Grand Rapids, and my daughters and her husband and kids, they live 3 miles away. My son, Trevor, he's a musician. He's on tour with Dawes. And for example, they're going to be, it's funny, they're going to be in Chicago down by Tinley Park at the casino with Willie Nelson.
Wow.
And last summer they were on tour with ELO, and Dawes is just, they're really great. Trev's playing the best venues imaginable, and he's just a good kid, and the band's great too. I really love
I remember you talking about him when he was a little boy.
a kid. I've got a picture of him holding a guitar. He's in a diaper. I mean, he literally has always been musical. Always been musical. Now he's doing what he loves to do.
What was the best part of those years for you?
In the Loop, it was, we literally, the age, we were all having kids, or we were going to school, some doctors, some plumbers, some cops. We did everything together. We would party together. We had concerts together. I would go to somebody's backyard. Hey, it's hot outside. We want to go swim. And somebody in Bolingbrook would come, and we literally grew up together. We did. I was very accessible. I always said to myself, I'm never going to get above my audience. And the day that happens, I got to get out. My audience, they're the stars. And I really hope that I can get into the Radio Hall of Fame. Not because of an egotist. I want to say thank you to the audience, because they won that award too. Some of the funniest folks I met they were from the audience, and then they become friends. It's just, I love the audience. I love Kevheads.
Kevheads.
Remember that?
Yeah, Kevheads.
Kevheads. There we go. And now there's second generation Kevheads. It's just, it's. I've been so blessed.
How many people thought that Jim Shorts was an actual person?
No, he is a real person, Joan.
No,
Yes,
sweetie.
he is.
Sweetie, honey.
No, I think he is. He owns a casino on Beaver Island. He's a mogul. But that's what I love about radio. It's theater of the mind. That's how come to this day, radio has gone through so many transitions because there's just so much out there now. But there's nothing better than to tune in and listen to Pat Hughes call a Cubs game. Or if you remember, Pat Foley calling a Blackhawks game, or it's just magical. There's something about sports and calling that game. I love it. I just love it. I love good radio where you just, who's that person look like? What does that person look like? What are they wearing?
And somebody's voice does not give you a good indication of what they look like. Somebody I was talking to yesterday said, what did you think of Robert Mueller's voice? And I was like, well, I thought it was a decent, yeah, but it doesn't match his eyebrows. They expected, because of all of his gravitas, for him to come out like Luciano Pavarotti and have this basso profundo.
No, you could tell he's nervous.
Yeah.
But there is something about that voice. And I've always had the face for radio because, people just say, oh my, he's got a horse head.
No,
he's
you
a Clydesdale.
Don't have a horse
my
head.
God, does he live out at Brookfield Zoo?
Oh no.
Does he eat hay?
You know what? You look like a perfectly normal person.
Yeah. Oh well, but I've got a genetic flaw because I'm Irish, where we have this horse head thing going. I was down in Notre Dame University. My cousin was Father John Kavanaugh. He was the president of Notre Dame. He buried President Kennedy.
Wow.
I'd never been down in Notre Dame. I went down last year, and there's this oil portrait of Father John Kavanaugh, gigantic one, and I posed next to it because he's got the horse head too. We each have the horse head, and I posed just like him.
Okay. Well, I want to set the record straight here. Kevin Matthews does not have a horse head. But we are going to pursue this and other issues, and we're going to talk about what Kevin is doing in
Yeah.
Chicago right now. After we take this break, we will be back with much more Kevin Matthews after this. Kevin Matthews, radio legend.
Yes.
Radio God. I actually
Oh,
like that
God.
better, Kevin. Thank you for
No,
that.
I
Radio God.
that's somebody's idea of a documentary, and I'm like, no, I don't think so. I don't think so.
So let's talk about why you're here. Let's go back
Sure.
to what happened that day you were on the air. What was that?
What I ended up doing is I did I mean close to 30 years here in Chicago, and I just decided because so much was changing in radio, I just wanted to go back where it all began, and that for me is Michigan, Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I had a chance to go back and do a morning show, plus also create radio stations, put radio formats on the air, really do what I would love to do. And it was a Tuesday morning, 7:16. I'm doing a morning show, and suddenly I can't move my hand, my arm, my leg. I'm thinking, am I having a stroke? And I eventually went to a neurologist, and they said, there is something in your brain. And I told my wife, well, at least I have a brain. And but they said it's the size of a walnut, and if it's a tumor, we can't operate. This is it. You've got 10 days. We'll do a brain biopsy. And I was an hour away from a brain biopsy when they said you've got a rare form of multiple sclerosis. So I started treatment, and it was a brutal treatment. And eventually, it was just too hard to do radio. I mean, like next couple of years, it's just really tough. And radio was starting to implode. I got a phone call, come on down to the office, and I was fired.
Oh.
And I mean, it was done. Here's 2 weeks severance pay. And I felt like Ray Liotta in Goodfellas at the end. With all this 30 years plus, and I get 2 weeks notice. And that's when the whole story of Broken Mary happened. What would happen? So I've got MS. I don't have a job. My mom says I've always heard voices. Kevin, and it's in my book. And I have always done voices on the radio. But I heard this voice, and go get your wife some flowers. She's been through a lot. And Joan, life, and everybody listening, there's no such thing as a coincidence. There isn't. You look up, there's a flower shop. And I decide, I'll go in. And I drove in. It's November. It just snowed. I got out of my truck. I'm walking towards the door. And this dumpster caught my eye. And I look, and I couldn't help, but is that a statue of the Virgin Mary? And it was on the ground. And I walked over to it. And it's a good-sized statue. And she's broken in half. She's no hands. She's covered in garbage and weeds. And I looked, and she's looking at me, and I heard this distinct voice. Will you deny me? Will you deny my mother? And I looked, and there's no way I'm leaving this here. And I walked into the store, and I was all by myself, and I said, can I help you? And I said, yeah, I'd really like to buy that statue of the Virgin Mary that's lying next to the dumpster. No. That's a family heirloom. And I hear that voice again. Will you deny me? Will you deny my mother? It was a haunting voice. And I just closed my eyes and said, God, please help me. And then I just said, I'll give money to the nuns that live out here. I had no idea what I was talking about. I had no idea that there's none. It just came out. And this woman, the clerk, she looks at me and she goes, I know your voice. Are you Kevin Matthews? And I go, yeah. You got fired. What happened? You got fired. And I got fired. I said, listen, I will give money there. I'll give money in your name if I can take her home. So she said, okay. So I didn't even buy my wife flowers. I went out, I picked her up, and I hate to talk about a woman's weight, but she's heavy. So I take one part, put her in my truck, another part, put her in my truck, make a little bed, go home, turn the heat up, and I'm going to take care of her. I felt good. And I put her in the garage, and a friend of mine who I've known for quite a while, Father Mark, I called him up. I said, listen, I found this statue of the Virgin Mary, and she's really busted up. She's broken in two, and do you know anybody that could fix her? And he did. He said, in the spring, there's this monument maker, and I went out there in the spring, and he looks at her, and she's in half, two pieces. He goes, oh, yeah, we can put her back together. I can put new hands on her. I'll completely repaint her, and she won't even look broken. And that's when, Joan, it really, really, really hit me. I said, no, she reminds me of me. And I said, no, I want to keep her broken. And we just put her back together, the two halves. I took her home. Father Mark came. I had him bless her. And that's when the miracles started. And you can read about it in Broken Mary, A Journey of Hope. It's amazing, truly, how many miracles have happened. And that statue represents all of us, because we're all broken. You know, we're loved by God, but we're all broken. No one's perfect. I mean, from the top, the Pope, the presidents, whatever, politicians, we're all broken, but we're loved by God. And more people are finding out about this statue, and the most broken are coming to this statue. It's Mary. And this resurgency of love for Mary is it's not me. Joan, I say, last night I was down in Joliet at St. Pat's. It was wall-to-wall people. They're not there to see me. It's about Mary. And I just say now I'm Mary's roadie. I do. I really say I'm Mary's roadie, because before that you might be in Savannah, Georgia. Just to see where she sends is amazing, and tomorrow is going to be historic for Chicago.
Okay, we're going to talk about what's going on tomorrow. We're going to talk about some of these miracles that you're going to tell us about, and so much more when we come back with Kevin Matthews. We are talking with radio legend, radio god Kevin Matthews, who happens to be Mary's roadie. And Kevin, if Lori has a question. Hi, Lori.
Hi, Kev. Good to hear your voice.
Oh, thank you so much. Fan. It's good to hear yours.
Thank you. Was able to go to the one of the Kev Head proms, and I still remembering having a blast.
Yeah.
I want to commend you. I want to commend you, and for talking about your illness. I too am the recipient of a former brain illness. I lived with a benign brain tumor for well over 10 years that mirrored mental illness, and it's so rare. Nobody thought of doing a CAT scan, and because of that, for a good 7+ years, I was diagnosed, treated, and housed as a mentally ill person. And it wasn't until the physical manifestations kicked in that I finally got the CAT scan that I needed. And I just happened to be so fortunate. It was done at a Northside hospital in the city. And a neurologist on duty happened to be the lead professor for the University of Chicago Hospital, saw that CAT scan, and basically gave me my life back.
Oh, my gosh. What a story, Lori.
Somehow I had the wherewithal to sign up for the Affordable Care Act. And I'm not going to get political, but the Affordable Care Act did save my life. Yep. It brought me back to my family. My story is very long. It's very complicated, but...
Well, I appreciate your calling to share it with you. I got to tell you, as somebody, my life was also saved by the Affordable Care Act. And I wanted to talk to you about, first of all, you made reference to miracles, and then you moved on. We got to unpack that a little bit. So what happened that after you found this broken Mary statue, you've been fired, you've been diagnosed with a rare form of MS. What miracle
One
did
of the
you
first
experience?
was I would have dreams right away, and of roses and of children. In Grand Rapids, we are blessed to have a DeVos Children's Hospital. All these tiny little kids for cancer and whatnot. And there was a little boy, 7 years old. His name was Oliver. His mom listened to the show. He had cancer. And he was the first to be introduced to the statue of Broken Mary. And he was out of the hospital for a few days. We took the statue of Broken Mary and we photographed him with it. And I still have the pictures because you've got his hospital bracelet. And little Oliver, he loved this statue, and he'd hug it. And we got beautiful pictures. It's as though he didn't have cancer when he was hugging that statue. And then he started getting sick and sick and sick. And basically this roses, I was to buy a rose for every child that had been treated at DeVos Children's Hospital. And this hospital had just opened, so I had to come up with 3,000 plus roses. Now, I'm unemployed. And again, I knew a florist, and I got the flowers, and the flowers were displayed inside the hospital. The statue, parents would bring their sick kids down, and they'd smell the roses, and we got press. It was our first publication press. Kevin Matthews got this statue, Broken Mary Project. He takes it to the sick. And then people started to take the statue home. Hospice. She went to hospice with people. She went with intensive care. She's been just with the most broken. And people started to write about it. And I was asked, you should really write a book about this. And it's an amazing book because it just didn't happen overnight. Broken Mary, A Journey of Hope. That friend, remember I told you I blurted out, I'll help those friends, those nuns that live out around here. Well, I did find out that there were nuns that lived out there. They were Franciscans. And I went out, Father Mark said, let's take the statue out. Tell them what you did. And I did. And I have become I love those sisters. And one helped produce this book. And she didn't want anything to do with me. She's a writing professor at Grand Valley University, Sister Lucia. And, I'd worked with Howard Stern, and, I might as well be Satan. And she's heard my radio show, but eventually she was talked into it. We wrote the book. It went to the 3 biggest publishing companies in America, and it just took off. And so much has happened after this book has been written. I mean, even last night.
And tell me what you're doing in Chicago now.
What I'm doing in Chicago, the statue of Broken Mary, or Mary, I like to say, Mary introduced me to this young, I love him, this Father Josh, young. He's a priest down at St. John Cantius, which is a 130-year-old church. It's just gorgeous. And I've known him for about a year and a half, and we've decided what we'd like to do is invite the city to come and just walk with us. We're going to have a candlelight vigil. The statue of Broken Mary is on a bed of roses, going to be carried by the Chicago Fire Department. We expect thousands, all ages, kids, to just come and say a prayer for the city of Chicago. That's it. No political, no blame. Just help us. Look, we just got a new mayor. Whether you voted for her or not, she obviously...
She needs our help.
Well, she needs a prayer. I mean, let's help.
So where can people meet up to do this?
What we're going to do is I'm going to speak about Broken Mary, and you can see Broken Mary at 7 o'clock. And then at 8, what we are going to do is leave St. John Cantius and go down Chicago Avenue. Now think, we have gotten every permit we've needed. This is Mary going, I'm serious. Or even the Chicago Bridge has been repaired ahead of schedule. And we're going to end at the water tower. And I love the water tower because it's where the only thing left of Chicago, the fire. And it was built around it again. So it's got meaning. And we invite everybody to come down and just walk. And the candlelight visual. It's been monsoon season for 10 days. And I know Mary's going to clear that weather. It's going to be a beautiful night, a historic night. So.
And how did this book and this story go international?
What I ended up doing is, if you know anything about Mary, you're going to be compelled to learn the rosary. She gave us the rosary. Mary gave us the rosary in the 12th century in France. And I just became a student of the rosary. And I look at it, it's Mary since she gave it to us. It's like her umbilical cord that feeds us, her son, or it's her hand. So many people want to know, it's her hand. And if you hold that hand, you're holding the power of God. You and I think it was Lori were saying, the Affordable Care Act saved my life. I think it was God. And when you stop to just, you're loved, no matter who, you're loved. I mean, Joan, obviously, how many prayers you said, or Laura that we talked to. You're loved. You're loved. And when you acknowledge that love, boy, it just really, it flows. It flows. I was telling you last week, I go to prisons. Mm-hmm. And when you are talking to lifers, and for some reason, some of these lifers are holding rosaries. Somebody said, what's it like to go to a prison? And I said, well, I feel, honestly, a tremendous amount of hope. Because you can be forgiven. And I said this to these inmates. I said, I really mean this. And they know when you're lying. I said, I really want us all to go to heaven. That's my dream. I want us all to be in heaven. And we can all be forgiven. I don't know what they did, but they're serving life. And I like to go to them, and I like to be with them. I told them in the yard, I said, Mary wants you to actually construct stations of the cross in the yard. Now, Mary gave us stations of the cross, and when she went home after the crucifixion, and I know that they're going to do it. And I can't wait to see where that goes. So it's humbling. It's really, really humbling. Like I said, I'm a roadie. I'm not here to judge. It's very, very humbling to see Our Lady work.
We have a fan who wants to talk to you, Big Papa.
Hey, hi, Big Papa.
Hey, Kev, it's great to hear you, man.
Oh, thank you.
I'm also known as Marcus, and I didn't know what happened to you, but so I'm really overjoyed to hear you, man. I'll tell you a quick story. I used to listen to you during the commute.
Yeah.
And I had this guy behind me had a Kev head sticker on his car, and I pulled up next to him. I'm a big black, sometimes intimidating looking kind of guy.
Sure.
And I pulled up to him with a mean face, down his window, and said, "Hey, what are you, Goofy?"
Yeah.
And we both had a big laugh.
There you go. There you go.
Wow, what a great...
Your characters were great.
Yeah.
Devon.
Oh, Devon. I was just going to say, Devon was a black space alien that I had so much fun with. And, oh, man, to this day, I have a dear friend of mine, Danny from the South Side, or you go down the South Side of Chicago. Big Papa, that's what I'm telling Joan. We did everything together. We did everything together. We dined together. We partied together. It's really good to hear your voice, and I can't thank you enough. I mean that.
Thanks so much for calling.
No, thank you.
God bless you, Big Papa. That's sweet.
And now, how's your health right now?
I'll tell you what, Joan. It's amazing that when I first took the meds for MS, they were brutal. Hated them. But now I'm getting an IV twice a year, and I look at it. I go to a fusion center, and I'm always sitting across from women that are undergoing cancer treatment, and and I look. I have got it blessed compared. When you see a young woman who's got like a 4-year-old at treatment, I love saying prayers to them. So how am I doing? I'm doing good. I've never been happier in my life.
Really?
I mean that. I've never been happier. I'm so blessed. And I totally love what I'm Mary's roadie. I'm Mary's roadie.
Well, I'm so glad the book has been such a success.
It
Broken
has.
Mary, A Journey of Hope by Kevin Matthews. Wherever you buy your publications.
Anywhere. And folks, you're more than welcome to just take a stroll. Whatever, just come on down and take a walk, and you'll feel the goodness. You really will. You will. I promise you.
Kevin, it is such a
great to see you.
So
Joan.
good to see you after all this time.
Yeah, God bless you, and good luck with all of what you're doing here.